Hey everyone, I have a special treat for you today. We are doing my Facebook Live event for the book Trail of Fears. And once upon a time, I took an online class on making book video teasers. I think I got all the words in there. So I am going to do some switcheroo here. And those of you that have been with me for a little while on these Facebook Live videos know that I am not exactly tech savvy. So give me a little grace as I switch over my screens here and you guys can see what I have created here. I hope you enjoyed the video. That is the only video that I have done for my books. Video teasers are for books are not what they used to be. They're not as popular now as they once were. But I have one for most of my books. You can find them on my YouTube channel. That would be at youtube.com/Sarah Turnquist, or you can find them on my website, sarahTurnquist.com. Each one of my books has its own page, and so if you go to that book's page, you will find that book's video on that page. So thank you for joining me for this very discombobulated beginning. I hope the video sound was decent. My tech support over there who had not done this before, maybe if he can tell me if the video did not sound right, we can play it again at the end, because the sound, I think, really adds to the video. And I'm not talking about me talking in the background while the video is going. So thank you for joining me. I am, again, for those of you that are joining us for the first time, I am speaker and author Sarah R. Turnquist, coming to you from Middle Tennessee. I am multi-published, clean historical romance author. Today I'll be sharing with you one of my novels, Trail of Fears. And I want you to feel free to ask questions in the comment section, and stay tuned, and we will have details at the end for our giveaway. We have a giveaway at the end of the Facebook Live. So, looking at my notes here, we have Trail of Fears, and I can't believe I'm not any better at this than I was at the first Facebook Live. This is Trail of Fears. The cover was done by Cora Graphics, one of my favorite cover designers, and she did a fantastic job. So you can see on the cover is the hero Thomas and the Cherokee maiden Adsila there in the background. She's the heroine of the novel. And for this particular cover, the struggle that we had was actually the male model. He had a cowboy hat on his head initially. And the hero in the story is a missionary. So yeah, not a cowboy. And I was sending mock-ups of the cover to my street team, Turnquist Troop, and it was one of my street team members that recommended that we look for a Parsons hat to put on the missionary, and it turned out great. It looks great on the cover. It really speaks to what his role is in the book. It's clearly not a cowboy hat, and it just works great. So I know some of y'all are like, street team, what does that mean? That's a strange word. A street team is basically an author's closest crew. They are the ones that get the freshest information from the author. Most authors do have a newsletter that they send out through email, and I have one of those too. And they share all kinds of information with their newsletter people. They keep, once a month or twice a month or once a quarter. It's different for every author. And they share basically what's going on in their author world, what books are coming out and all that kind of stuff. But the street team is a little bit different in that they get the most up-to-date information, and they can get it every day, every couple days, at least every week. And I can't speak to what every author does for their troop, but I can share with you a little bit about what I'm doing with my troop. And I'm actually relaunching my troop right now. But for my troop in the past, they've gotten cover mock-ups as I'm getting a cover design, so they can give me feedback, and they can see how a cover gets created. They've gotten the ability to help me name characters, and we've made it a little bit of a contest. Whoever suggests the name that I pick will get a $5 Starbucks or Amazon gift card. They get rough drafts of scenes that I'm creating, those little sneak peeks of things that I've just written. Sometimes they get the markup edited version, so they can see a little bit what it's like as an author goes through and self-edits before it goes to the actual editor, who tears it up even more. My street team, Turnquist Troop, gets the first pass for being on my ARC team. ARC, A-R-C, stands for Advanced Reader Copy. So they'll get copies that go out before the actual book goes out. And this team is able to give feedback, or they're able to be the first ones to review the book, that kind of thing. All sorts of things like this. Special contests, special giveaways that are not connected to contests or that are connected to contests. This is just kind of my peeps. You know what I'm saying? I can't believe it just said peeps. If you happen to be interested in something like this, like I said, I'm about to relaunch my team. You can sign up to be on this team. The link is there in the comments, thanks to my tech guy over there. So back to the cover. Again, we have the hero, the heroine, and as always, I want to point out the tagline right there under the title. And the tagline says, I'm going to read my notes because that's really kind of small. Maybe I'll read this. When there are no answers, is faith enough? So those of you that have been watching these Facebook Lives for a while know what we're going to do next. We're going to do what I call the bookstore maneuver. We're going to flip it over and look at the back. Look, there's my little author picture. The back of these covers, these graphic artists, the backs are just beautiful too. And then the side, she does such a good job. Good job, Cora. Wonderful. Okay. He's a steadfast missionary. She's a proud Cherokee. Can their love survive the brutal trail of tears? Thomas Greyson believes God had called him to spread the gospel. He leaves his sheltered world behind to live among the native peoples and teach in their school. But as the government tightens its grip, not everyone is ready to listen to the gospel's message of love, least of all the stubborn beauty who stole his heart. Adsila resists bending her knee to the white man's God when Thomas seemingly tries to steal away the last remaining shreds of her heritage. Is she prepared to fight him tooth and nail? But when he stands with her people in the face of hardship, her soul begins to long for the curious stranger and his unshakable faith. Against impossible odds and staggering loss, can Thomas and Adsila find the strength to follow their heart's true path? Okay, so there's the back cover copy. And I know what some of you are thinking. I do. And this is what you're thinking, something along these lines. Some of you, don't you think it's in poor taste to write a novel featuring a romance set against such a tragic part of history? I hear you. I do. I really do. Hey, Connie. But this is not just a book about a romance. This novel tells a story that I believe needs to be told, featuring historical details that I certainly was never told in high school or college history classes, details that I think others need to know. The romance in this case with this book takes a back seat to the bigger story and the question, that author question that I've talked about, that I'm trying to work out through my characters. See, in a sense, I am attempting to honor so many men and women and children that endured such suffering and hardship by making sure that they are not dismissed, that their story does not die, and that they are heard, that they're known, that they're seen as much as I possibly can. There is this question that we all face in such times as these, that the times such as the forced removals of the Native Americans, in such times as we're facing right now with the global pandemic, where is God in the midst of such suffering? How can he be a good God and let innocent people suffer and die? Such a universal question, such a deep human question, right? Oh my goodness, we're getting all deep up in here. These questions are worded a million different ways by a million different people and give way to 1,000 questions like them. But that was the starting point for me to launch this story. My interest in the Trail of Tears began with a drive down a road in Middle Tennessee that happened to be part of the Cherokee Trail of Tears. And as I drove down this road, I would look at the landscape and wonder, was that tree there? Did they look at that tree? In all actuality, it probably wasn't. But was there a tree before that looked like it? Where did their feet fall on this path? What was it like for them as they walked this stretch? Did some of them fall? Did some of them die on this path, on this stretch of road? And so I began to wonder and think back to the things I had learned about the Trail of Tears back in high school and college history classes. And I was very sad to realize that it wasn't very much. So I began to research. And the more I researched, the more I realized that there was a story, that there were details of the story that needed to be told, that people needed to hear. I was convinced that the story needed to be shared. So that's how this book was birthed. So there you have it. And I will go ahead and read an excerpt. This excerpt is, just for your bearings, from chapter 3. Okay, here we go. Let me get a drink. Wet my whistle. In case you didn't know before, I'm from the South. We wet our whistles here. Adsila leaned back, angling her body toward the sky. The heat of the sun covered her skin. Closing her eyes, she sighed as the rays bathed her. She soaked up the light much as her plants did. Would it rejuvenate her the same? Couldn't she just sit here forever? Why couldn't life be as simple as her garden, without complications? But it wasn't. She couldn't pretend it was. Mother and father must not realize how thin the walls of their small cabin truly were. Their words penetrated her solitude. Would she rather not know? Her heart poured hot liquid. Tiny rivers formed on her face. Yes, she mourned for the Choctaw, the creek, and even more, for what may happen to her people. The wind lifted her braids slightly. Would it carry her fears away? If only. She exhaled into the wind. Oh, God. Could he hear her? She had never prayed to the Christian God. God, are you there? Do you care about my people? Didn't you care about the Choctaw, the Creek? No answer. Thomas says you care, but you allowed them to be what? What words to put to it? If you are almighty and all-powerful, could you not have stopped it? Thomas's voice came to her. God has a plan in all things. We don't always understand, but if we look for it, we can see his hand. Is that true, God? Could this be your plan? A shudder shook her shoulders. If so, I'm not sure I want any part of you. A good God would not allow such suffering. God is unchanging. God is love. God is good. Thomas's voice continued in her head. We cannot lean on our own understanding. Our perception is imperfect. Could Thomas be wrong? Part of her wanted to believe, but what she saw around her didn't fit the idea of a loving, merciful God. Thomas had said God was big enough for her questions. She gazed toward the clouds. Help me understand. If you truly are who Thomas says you are, help me understand. A man cleared his throat behind her. She jerked her head around, nearly losing her balance. She caught herself just short of falling face first in the dirt. Thomas stood by the fence, a half grin on his face. How long had he been there? Thomas, she said, trying to stand up. Had she been praying out loud? Had he heard? I didn't mean to intrude, but his smile widened to cover his entire face. Her features warmed. He must have heard everything. Once the dirt was beneath her feet and her dress smoothed, she raised her eyes to meet his again. I'm sorry, when did you? Where did you? She couldn't even form a sentence. Swearing briefly in her native language, she cursed her tongue-tie. Not long. His eyes were bright. Amused? I didn't wish to disturb you. You seemed so peaceful. She folded her arms over her chest and looked toward the ground. Couldn't she become a bird and fly away? But I didn't want to eavesdrop either. He tilted his head and caught her eyes. Honest. She glanced at what a picture he made, hunched over and head cocked to the side. He looked like his body was disjointed. A little laugh escaped her lips. He straightened and chuckled too. Did he know what a sight he was? Either way, it felt good to share a laugh. You're not intruding. She stepped toward him, maneuvering through the small gate to stand next to him. I was just thinking. He nodded, but his gaze drifted to something in the distance. Where were his thoughts? Did you need to speak with my father? I can fetch him. She turned in the direction of the house. No, he said, placing a hand on her arm. She glanced at the place where he made contact. Why did his touch heat her skin so? He pulled his hand back. Did he think he had offended? I came to talk to you. Me? What would he need with her? While they'd had their share of interactions, it was always a result of them being thrown together. Single men only sought maidens out for one reason. I need to ask a favor. He shoved both hands in his pockets. What kinds of favors did white men ask maidens for? That is my daughter standing outside my office. So wonderful. What kinds of favors did white men ask maidens for? She leaned against the fence post. Her stomach turned. I need to be away, only for a few days. I wondered if you could, if you wanted to, if you'd be willing to take up teaching at the school, just until I got back. A knot pinched in the pit of her stomach. You're leaving? His gaze leveled on her, his blue eyes darker than she had ever seen. Was he weighing some decision? Finally he spoke. The state of Georgia has passed a law that prohibits white men from living on Indian land without a state license. She shook her head. State law? What could this mean? Keeping white men off Indian land? Was this a good thing? Except it would mean all the missionaries, the teachers, any aid would be forced to leave. One of the missionaries, Samuel Worcester, believes this law is a way the state is taking power from the Cherokee Nation, passing a law to tell them how to manage their own territory. 12 of us missionaries are going to New Dakota to protest. You and other white men? are going to protest your government for the sake of the Cherokee? Her eyes widened. There was a strange sensation high in her chest, not unpleasant exactly. Of course, his eyes searched her features. What they're doing is not right. Your people should be allowed to govern yourselves. The Cherokee have a governing system. It's not as if it's anarchy down here. The tingling in her chest intensified and filled that space until it seemed it would burst. She was so happy. But why did the knot in her stomach continue to tighten? So will you? His eyes were bright, his voice soft and low. Will I what? What had he asked me again? Will you take charge of the school while I'm gone? Do you think I am the most qualified? Her brows furrowed. What about Adohi? She could not be the most suitable replacement. Not the most qualified. I think you could teach the children a lot about herbs and gardening. You have the best English in the village. Besides, Adohi's wife will deliver any day now. Her face heated all the more. Such compliments. But he was right about Yona. If you are certain, I will accept. She managed to make her mouth broaden into a smile she wasn't sure she felt. I am certain. He placed a hand on hers. And it came, that silence in which they just stared at one another. What was he thinking? Drawn into those blue-gray eyes, she found it difficult to think. And try as she might, she could not tear herself away. Thomas disrupted their gaze by turning and then pulled his hand away. She gripped the fence to keep from swaying toward him. Did he notice? Thank you, Adsila. I am much relieved to know I leave the classroom in good hands. She offered him a weak smile. Her thoughts and emotions were too tangled for anything more. When will you leave? 3 days from now. The knot tightened. It was unbearable now. She placed a hand over her middle. Could you come to the schoolhouse tomorrow? It would give me a chance to tell you where we are in math, reading, and science. She nodded, afraid to speak, afraid of what she may say. I'll be going then, he turned. What was she going to do? Could she let him walk away? Her heart thundered, and her throat tightened as his steps carried him away from her. Dinner, she called. What? He spun, an eyebrow quirked. Would you like to stay for dinner? She let out a long breath. He smiled. Love to. All right. So there was that scene. Okay, as I mentioned last time, this story will be made available as an audiobook in the next couple of months. I am proofing the audiobook right now. So Becky Brabham, the narrator that I'm working with, has already laid all the tracks. I'm just going through and listening for any minor things that may need to be re-recorded as I'm going through. And now it's time for our giveaway. So here's how the giveaway will work. For those of you that have not been in one of the live events before, I'm going to pose a question and invite you to answer in the comments. We will collect comments for the giveaway, responses for the giveaway drawing for the next 24 hours. So at 2:27 p.m. on Friday, April the 16th, let me check, get that date right. No, today's the 16th, Friday, April the 17th. So at 2:26, Friday, April the 17th, 2020, we will stop collecting responses to be entered into the giveaway drawing. You can continue to comment and ask questions and answer the question if you would like, but at that point, no more entries into the giveaway. The winner, of the giveaway will receive a paperback copy of Trail of Fears and a $10 Amazon gift card. All of that will be coming from the Amazon warehouse. So I won't be able to sign it. We're not sending it from our house. Just during this time, we feel like that's the most appropriate thing. That's the safest thing. That just for all parties concerned, it just seems like the best thing to do. So here's the question. Drum roll. That doesn't sound very much like a drum roll. Were you a fan of history in school? You can decide whether it's high school, college, whatever, middle school, whatever. Were you a fan of history in school? How about now? You can answer both questions, either question, whatever you want to do. I will go ahead and answer. I was not actually a huge fan of history in school. I did well in history, but I got more interested in history in college. Though I only had to take one history class in college, I actually have a biology and chemistry degree. So I didn't have to take a lot of history. But I found it very fascinating. I always found history fascinating, but I didn't really care for it in my earlier years. But as I started writing more seriously, and reading more and more and more, I fell in love with clean historical romance. Yeah, all periods though. Not much into the wartime, even though I do have books that are set during wartime. I'm not much for reading about intense battles and whatnot. I'm more interested in character interactions and the growth of a character and the relationships between characters. Of course, romantic relationships, but also relationships between friends and sisters and so brothers and sisters and all manner of mothers and all that kind of thing. So the relationships between characters intrigue me. So let's hear your comments, or let's read your comments. And I look forward to seeing you next time.